My name is Zach, and today I'll be answering the essential and urgent question of what is Marxism? In an epoch of capitalist ideological and economic domination that was instilled by the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, not a term more perceived in Western political discourse more like to a horse too bad to stand than Marxism. Used as mostly a derogatory term to describe political opponents, socialists, communists, and Marxists are all deemed as inferior, evil, and deteriorates the ethos of whoever is subjected with the label. However, the question that comes with all this anti-Marxist rhetoric is, of course, what is Marxism? According to the Oxford Dictionary, Marxism is the political and economic theories of Karl Marx, which explains the changes in development in society as a result of oppression between the social classes. But is this definition really enough to totally encapsulate Marx's theory? The answer lies embedded in his own empirical experiences of society and the philosophical landscape that crafted the portfolio that Marx used to unfold his theory. Born in Germany in 1818, Karl Marx witnessed a time of change, with the main proprietor of that change being the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution moved the basis of the economy from agriculture residing in the countryside to the centralization of a commercial and industrial economy centralized in cities. The movement itself comes from the new opportunities presented in these cities, where a rural farm worker would make more money in a factory than working on their farms in the countryside. The mass production of goods made profits soar. Because of this exponential increase in the volume of goods created by the new means of manufacturing in factories. According to encyclopedia.com, in 1865, there were around 1.3 million people working in manufacturing companies. By 1900, the number had increased to 4.5 million, and 10 years later, it was estimated to be around 8 million. However, Marx looked upon this new organization of labor with dismay. Marx looked at capitalism not as an era of prosperity, but with a critical lens, underlying the inherent contradictions that Marx perceived in the new system. To illustrate these contradictions, an assessment of history is needed. In ancient societies, a small population of slave owners owned a marginally large group of slaves, supplying them with a place to live or even giving them the right to live with the transaction of labor. Eventually, seeing their strength in numbers, along with the realization of the oppression brought by the slave owning class, they finally overthrew their slave owners. After slavery was overthrown, a new system called feudalism was put into place. This system also had a small group of nobility, just like the slaves' nobility, giving property to a larger group called serfs in exchange for labor. Eventually, just like the slaves prior, they overthrew their lords of strength and numbers. With that change came capitalism. In capitalism, that kind of relationship or dynamic doesn't exist, right? According to Marx, instead of the lives of slaves or the property of serfs, Marx argued that the power of the bourgeoisie to obtain and distribute wages was unethical. To Marx, the power of the bourgeoisie was a contradiction, where the surplus of profit shouldn't be distributed according to wages. Rather, it should be distributed based on material work, while the owning class had nothing to do with that work. As Marx said in his book, The Poverty of Philosophy, the hand mill gives you society with the feudal lord, the steam mill society with the industrial capitalist. Marx theorized according to this new idea of the cognitive history was driven by the conflict between the bourgeoisie and proletariat, that eventually the conflict would lead to capitalism succumbing to the same fate that the prior systems fell to. But instead of leading to a system where a small minority of oppressors control a large oppressed majority, the revolution would result in a dictatorship of the proletariat. In this new economy, the proletariat would own the means of production, which would allow the proletariat to distribute the surplus labor according to what is produced. In Marx's words, in the Communist Manifesto, the development of modern industry, therefore, cuts for under its feet the very foundation of what the bourgeoisie produces and appropriates products. What the bourgeoisie therefore produces above all are its own gravediggers. Its fall and the victory of the proletariat are equally inevitable. Relating back to his concept of history, where class struggle is the main driving force of historical change. It can be interpreted into sociological theory of conflict, where the theory emphasizes that the interaction within a society is based on the socioeconomic positions each individual is in because of the Marxist concept of the financial and hierarchical oppression that the capitalist dynamic creates. My purpose of this speech was to give an ideological viewpoint that is outside of what Americans experience and interact with. I also wish that I give a definition of Marxism that isn't only from the